Karen loved walking through the city streets on weekends. The roads were wide and lined with trees, and the air was always fresh after the morning cleaning. Today the city seemed unusually busy. People were gathering near the royal palace, and Karen could hear the faint sound of drums and trumpets from a distance. She felt curious and decided to walk closer to see what was happening. The sun was bright, and she adjusted her sunglasses as she stepped carefully through the crowd. As she moved forward, Karen noticed that everyone was staring in the same direction. Children were sitting on their parents' shoulders to get a better view. Street vendors were selling snacks and drinks, and the aroma of fresh bread and roasted nuts filled the air. Karen smiled at the cheerful chaos. She loved the energy of the city during celebrations, even though she usually preferred quiet walks. Suddenly, she saw them. A line of guards was marching toward the palace gates. They wore bright red uniforms with gold buttons and tall black hats. Their boots made loud, precise sounds on the cobblestone street. Each guard moved perfectly in rhythm with the others. Karen stopped and watched. Her heart beat faster as she noticed how serious and disciplined they looked. She had seen guards before, but never such a large group moving in perfect unison. Karen was so focused on the guards that she did not notice where she was standing. She had her phone in her hand, taking pictures of the colorful uniforms and the polished boots. She stepped backward to get a better angle and suddenly realized that she had stepped directly into the path of the marching guards. She froze. The nearest guard was only a few steps away. Karen's heart skipped a beat. She waved her hands nervously and said, "Oh, I am sorry. I didn't see you there." The guard's eyes were focused straight ahead. He did not stop. His face showed no anger, only determination. Karen felt a mix of fear and embarrassment. She tried to step aside, but her foot slipped on a small puddle and she stumbled slightly. The crowd around gasped. People whispered to each other, wondering what the guard would do next. Karen took a deep breath, wishing she could disappear. She had never wanted attention, especially not this kind. Then something surprising happened. A small dog ran across the street, barking loudly. Karen jumped back instinctively, and to everyone's relief, the guard stopped. His boots made a solid sound as he planted himself firmly on the ground. He looked at Karen with calm eyes. Karen's mouth opened slightly in shock. She expected anger, maybe a shout, but there was none. The guard's expression was steady and quiet, almost gentle. People in the crowd relaxed and smiled quietly. Karen's cheeks were warm. She tried to straighten her posture and looked at the guard. He nodded slightly, as if asking if she was all right. Karen felt a sudden sense of relief. She nodded quickly and whispered, "Yes, I am fine. Thank you." The guard gave a small smile and turned back toward his path. His movements were still perfect, still disciplined, but there was something human about his gesture. Karen blinked, realizing she had just experienced something unexpected and remarkable. The crowd started murmuring with appreciation. Some people clapped quietly. Karen felt a strange feeling in her chest. She had not only avoided a serious accident, but had also witnessed something rare, a mix of strict discipline and genuine kindness. She took a step back to give space and watched as the guard continued marching toward the palace. Every movement was precise, every step calculated, but there was a sense of calm in his presence. Karen felt both amazed and inspired. She decided to follow the guard from a safe distance. The street was lively, filled with music, colors, and happy faces. Flags waved in the sunlight, and the smell of flowers from nearby stalls mixed with the aroma of food. Children ran around laughing, and Karen noticed that the guard always paid attention to the crowd. If someone moved too close, he would adjust his path slightly or nod politely. Karen thought about how different this was from what she had imagined. Guards were not just strict. They could be aware and kind at the same time. Karen walked slowly, observing everything. Her curiosity grew with every step. She had never thought about what it meant to be a royal guard. The uniform, the precise marching, and the calm expressions made the guard seem almost like a statue at first. But now she saw the humanity behind it, the small gestures that made him more than just a person in a uniform. Karen realized that today's walk was going to be unforgettable. Something important was about to happen, and she felt excited and nervous at the same time. Karen watched the guard as he continued marching toward the palace gates. Every step was perfect, every movement precise. She wanted to move out of the way, but her curiosity kept her rooted to the spot. The crowd was still watching quietly, some taking pictures, some whispering in excitement. Karen felt her heart racing. She had never been this close to a royal guard, and the experience felt unreal. Suddenly, she realized that she had walked a little too far forward. The guard was now only a few feet away. Karen quickly tried to step back, but her shoes slipped on the wet cobblestone. She stumbled slightly and almost fell. The guard paused again, not abruptly, but enough to give her space. Karen's hands shook as she straightened herself. She could feel the eyes of the crowd on her. Some people were smiling, some looked concerned, but no one was angry. Karen felt embarrassed. She whispered, "I am so sorry," hoping the guard would ignore her. But he turned his head slightly and looked at her. His eyes were calm, steady, and kind. Karen blinked. She had expected a frown or a harsh word, but there was nothing of that sort. The guard's expression made her feel a little braver. She took a deep breath and said, "I promise I will move out of the way." The guard only nodded and continued marching. His steps were strong and rhythmic, but they no longer felt intimidating. Karen noticed that the guard was not just following orders blindly. He looked around carefully, making sure the crowd stayed safe. Every few steps, he glanced at children and elderly people nearby. If someone got too close, he adjusted his position slightly to avoid them. Karen realized that this was more than just marching. The guard had responsibility, awareness, and respect for everyone around him. She felt amazed. She had never seen someone perform such a disciplined task with such attention and care. As the guard approached the palace entrance, a sudden movement caught Karen's eye. A young boy had run into the path of the guards while chasing a balloon. People gasped, fearing that the boy would be hurt. But the guard reacted immediately. He stopped at the exact right distance, giving the boy enough room to run past safely. Karen's eyes widened. The crowd clapped quietly, and the boy waved at the guard with excitement. Karen felt a warm feeling inside. She had seen bravery, kindness, and discipline all in one moment. Karen realized that she had blocked the guard at the perfect time. If she had moved too early, she would not have witnessed this. She smiled to herself, feeling lucky. The guard continued marching toward the palace gate. Karen followed him from a safe distance, careful not to block anyone or cause a problem. She felt a strange mix of fear, excitement, and admiration. She wanted to know more about this man and how he managed to stay so calm and composed. The street was filled with music, flags, and colorful decorations. Vendors called out to the crowd, selling snacks, flowers, and small souvenirs. Karen walked slowly, observing everything. She noticed how the guard's movements were perfectly in sync with the drum beats. Each step, each turn was timed perfectly. Karen realized that this kind of precision required years of training and focus. She felt respect for the guard's dedication. It was more than just a job. It was a way of showing care for the people and the city. Suddenly, Karen's attention shifted. She noticed the guard glance briefly in her direction. For a moment, their eyes met. Karen felt a little nervous, unsure of how to react. But the guard gave a slight nod as if acknowledging her presence without saying anything. Karen's heart raced. She had expected anger or irritation, but instead she felt recognized and respected. The simple gesture made her feel connected to the moment, as if she had shared a secret understanding with someone disciplined and strong. Karen continued to follow the guard as they approached the main palace gates. She felt that something special was about to happen. Her steps were careful, but her excitement was growing. She wanted to see how the event would unfold. She also wanted to learn more about the guard, who had turned a simple march into an unforgettable lesson about discipline, patience, and kindness. Karen knew that this walk would remain in her memory for a long time. Karen followed the marching guard carefully, keeping a safe distance while trying to stay part of the crowd. She felt a strange mix of nervousness and excitement. The palace gates were now visible, tall and shining under the bright sunlight. The guard moved steadily, his uniform crisp, boots polished, and hat straight. Every step was precise, and Karen could hear the echo of the boots on the cobblestones. She admired the calmness in his movements. Despite the crowd, he seemed completely focused, yet aware of everyone around him. Suddenly, a small ball rolled into the street, followed by a child who ran after it without noticing the marching guard. Karen's eyes widened. She knew that if the child didn't stop, there could be an accident. She wanted to shout or run forward, but she froze, unsure what to do. Everyone around gasped and held their breath. To her amazement, the guard noticed the child immediately. Without breaking his rhythm, he adjusted his steps and slowed slightly, creating space for the child to pass safely. Karen felt her heart fill with admiration. The guard's awareness and calm reaction had prevented what could have been a chaotic moment. After the child ran past, the guard continued marching with the same perfect rhythm. Karen could feel the energy of the crowd change. People whispered quietly about how impressive he was. Karen realized that his training allowed him not only to perform a disciplined march, but also to respond to unexpected events with patience. She thought about herself. She had panicked just by stepping in his way, but he had handled much more with complete calm. Karen smiled to herself, feeling both nervous and inspired. As the guard moved closer to the palace gates, Karen noticed a small group of tourists trying to take pictures. They were standing too close to the street, and Karen worried they might block him. The guard did not shout or gesture angrily. Instead, he kept moving and gently tapped one tourist's shoulder, guiding them to a safer position. Karen felt amazed. He showed authority without anger and kindness without losing control. She realized that discipline could be powerful and humane at the same time. Karen walked carefully, keeping pace with the guard from a safe distance. The sound of trumpets and drums grew louder as they neared the main gate. Flags waved in the breeze, and the sunlight reflected off the palace walls, making the entire scene glow. Karen felt a sense of excitement she had never experienced before. The guard's presence made everything feel important, like she was part of something grand. She couldn't help but notice how everyone respected him, even in a crowd of strangers. Then something unexpected happened. A small dog ran across the street, barking loudly. Karen jumped back, startled. The dog ran straight into the path of the guard. The crowd gasped, thinking the guard would be forced to stop suddenly. Karen held her breath, unsure what would happen next. To her surprise, the guard paused at the perfect moment. He did not stumble or lose his rhythm entirely. He shifted slightly, allowing the dog to pass safely. Karen's eyes widened in shock. She had not expected such precision combined with awareness. The crowd clapped quietly, impressed by his calmness. Karen felt a strange connection to the guard now. She realized that this was not just a performance. Every step, every glance, every action showed care and responsibility. She thought about how many people would never notice these small details, but she had witnessed them all. The guard continued marching toward the palace gates, strong, calm, and disciplined. Karen walked a little closer, wanting to see what would happen next. Her curiosity and admiration had grown into something deeper. As the gates grew nearer, Karen felt a mixture of nervousness and excitement. She wondered if the guard would notice her again. She remembered how he had stopped when she blocked him earlier. She hoped that this time she would not be an obstacle. She kept her eyes on him, noticing every step, every movement, and the calm way he carried himself. Karen realized that this encounter had already changed the way she looked at people who followed rules. Discipline and kindness could exist together in the most unexpected ways. Karen's heart was still beating fast as she walked closer to the palace gates. The guard had paused only once for the small dog, and now he was marching steadily again. Karen felt nervous yet excited. She had never seen anyone move with such perfect balance between discipline and kindness. Every step he took seemed planned but natural, strong yet calm. Karen thought about how much training and practice it must take to do something like this every single day. The closer they got to the gates, the more people crowded around. Tourists tried to take pictures, children ran past laughing, and vendors shouted softly to attract customers. Karen felt overwhelmed by the activity, but the guard moved through it all as if nothing could disturb him. He adjusted his path gently whenever someone was too close. Karen watched carefully, amazed by the quiet control he had over the situation. She realized that he was not just following orders. He was watching, thinking, and caring for everyone around him. As the guard approached the main entrance, he suddenly stopped again. Karen blinked, unsure why. People whispered quietly, curious about what would happen next. The guard looked directly at her. Karen froze. She felt her cheeks warm. She had expected him to ignore her or continue marching without noticing her presence. But he did notice her, and the way he looked was not strict or angry. It was calm, thoughtful, and gentle. Karen felt surprised and nervous at the same time. The guard bent slightly and whispered something softly, just loud enough for Karen to hear. She leaned in and listened carefully. He said, "Are you okay?" Karen's eyes widened. She had expected scolding or a sharp voice, not concern. Her lips trembled slightly as she whispered back, "Yes, I am fine. Thank you." The guard nodded once, straightened his uniform, and continued marching toward the palace gates. Karen felt a strange warmth in her chest. She had never expected to be treated with such kindness by someone so disciplined. Karen took a careful step closer, wanting to understand him better. She noticed how his eyes moved slowly across the crowd, checking if anyone needed help or guidance. If someone got too close, he adjusted his position without breaking his rhythm. Karen realized that the guard's strength did not come only from training. It also came from awareness, patience, and respect. She had blocked him earlier by accident, but now she saw that his kindness made the entire situation feel safe and respectful. The crowd around them started clapping quietly. People whispered about the guard's calmness and how perfectly he handled the small challenges of the march. Karen felt proud to witness this. She thought about her own behavior earlier, stumbling and panicking. She felt grateful for the guard's patience. For the first time, she understood how discipline and kindness could work together to create a positive effect on everyone nearby. She felt inspired and wanted to carry this lesson in her own life. Karen noticed that the guard stopped again, this time a little closer to her. He reached into a small pocket in his uniform and pulled out a folded note. Karen's eyes widened in surprise. The guard stepped closer, keeping a respectful distance, and motioned for her to take it. Karen hesitated for a moment, then reached out and took the note carefully. She unfolded it slowly and read the words written neatly on the paper. Kindness and respect make life brighter. Always choose patience. Karen felt her heart fill with emotion. She had expected nothing from this encounter, but the guard's simple gesture and message touched her deeply. She looked up at him and gave a small, grateful smile. The guard nodded once more, turned, and continued marching toward the palace gate. Karen watched him go, feeling amazed at how one person could make such a strong impression without saying much. She realized that she had witnessed a rare combination of discipline, awareness, and humanity. Karen stayed in place for a moment, holding the note in her hand. She thought about what had just happened. The simple walk had turned into a life lesson about patience, respect, and kindness. She felt lucky to have experienced this, and she knew it would stay with her forever. Karen looked around at the crowd, still lively and excited, but now she saw the moment differently. She had learned something important from a royal guard, and it had changed the way she viewed people in life. Karen held the small note in her hand, feeling its words sink into her heart. She smiled quietly and took a deep breath. The crowd around her was still lively, but she felt calmer now. The royal guard had left an impression she would never forget. She wanted to follow him a little farther, just to see where he would go and how he would continue his march. She stayed behind at a safe distance, careful not to block anyone, and walked slowly toward the palace gates. The street was filled with music and laughter. Children ran around holding balloons while families took pictures near the palace. Vendors sold flowers, snacks, and small souvenirs, and the smell of fresh bread mixed with the scent of roasted nuts in the air. Karen noticed that the guard moved through all of this effortlessly. He was aware of every person near him, adjusting his steps when needed, yet he never broke his rhythm. Karen felt amazed at how calm and focused he remained, even in the midst of such activity. As she followed him, Karen saw a small group of tourists struggling to stay out of the way. They were distracted by the beautiful palace and the marching music. The guard noticed them and gave a slight nod, directing them gently without speaking. Karen watched in awe. She had never thought that following rules could be so respectful and thoughtful. It was clear that the guard's training went beyond marching perfectly. He cared about the safety and comfort of everyone around him. Karen felt a sense of respect growing inside her. She thought about her own actions earlier in the day. She had blocked the guard without thinking and had stumbled, but he had handled the situation with kindness. Now she realized that small acts of patience and awareness could make a big difference. She decided to be more mindful in her own life, noticing how the guard's actions were teaching her an important lesson. The guard continued toward the main palace entrance, and Karen noticed something interesting. He paused near a young woman who had dropped her hat in the street. The guard bent slightly, picked it up carefully, and handed it back to her. The woman smiled and thanked him, and he nodded politely before continuing. Karen felt her admiration grow. The guard was disciplined, strong, and kind all at once. Every step, every gesture showed awareness and respect for others. As they moved closer to the palace gates, Karen noticed a small boy trying to wave at the guard while holding a toy flag. The boy was shy and hesitant, but the guard noticed him. He slowed slightly and gave the boy a small nod. The boy's eyes lit up and he waved more confidently. Karen smiled. realizing that the guard's presence had the power to inspire people, even children. His calmness, focus, and kindness were noticed by everyone, making him someone more than just a guard. He was a figure of respect and trust. Karen walked a little closer, careful to stay at a respectful distance. She wanted to see everything clearly. The guard's movements were so precise that it felt like watching a performance, but it was real life. The sun reflected off his polished boots, and the gold buttons on his uniform glimmered. Karen noticed how he stayed aware of everyone around him. He moved through the crowd without causing any problems, guiding and protecting people gently while still marching perfectly. Karen thought about how much she could learn from this moment. Life was full of challenges, and discipline and patience were important. The guard had shown her that rules were not only for order but also for respect and care. She felt inspired to carry this lesson forward. Following him had become more than curiosity. It was a way for her to understand patience, kindness, and awareness in the simplest and most meaningful way. As they reached the gates, Karen felt her excitement growing. The guard moved with calm authority, yet he seemed approachable and human. She realized that this walk had become an unforgettable experience. She was no longer just a curious observer. She had learned something valuable from a simple encounter. Karen smiled to herself, holding the note tightly. She knew she would remember this day forever, and that the lessons she had learned would stay with her for a long time. Karen walked slowly behind the royal guard, keeping a safe distance but unable to stop watching him. Every movement he made seemed controlled, confident, and purposeful. She could see the shine on his polished boots, the straight line of his uniform, and the careful way he adjusted his steps whenever someone came too close. Karen felt amazed that someone could remain so disciplined while surrounded by so much activity. She realized that the guard was not just performing his duty. He was guiding the people and protecting them in small, careful ways. As they reached a wider part of the street, Karen noticed that the crowd was becoming even larger. Tourists and local visitors alike had gathered near the palace to watch the ceremony. Children ran with balloons, families took photos, and vendors called softly to sell snacks and souvenirs. Karen kept her eyes on the guard. She noticed how he subtly shifted his path to avoid disturbing anyone, yet he never broke his rhythm. Every movement was precise, every glance thoughtful. Karen felt admiration and respect growing stronger inside her. Suddenly, she noticed something unusual. A small boy had wandered too close to the edge of the street, curious about the marching guards. He was holding a toy drum and watching the music with wide eyes. Karen felt a surge of worry. The crowd was noisy, and the boy seemed unaware of how close he was to the marching path. Karen opened her mouth to warn him, but before she could say anything, the guard noticed the boy. He slowed his steps just enough to allow the child to step back safely. Karen's eyes widened in surprise. The guard's awareness and calm reaction had prevented a possible accident. She felt amazed at his ability to manage the situation without alarming anyone. The boy's mother noticed what had happened and quickly thanked the guard. The guard nodded politely and continued marching. Karen smiled quietly. She realized that the guard's actions were teaching her more than she had expected. Discipline alone was not enough. It was combined with patience, awareness, and care for others. Karen felt that this simple encounter was becoming a lesson in life itself. As they continued toward the main palace gate, Karen noticed a small dog running across the street. The dog barked loudly and seemed ready to dart into the crowd. Karen froze, unsure what would happen. To her amazement, the guard paused at just the right moment. He did not stumble, he did not shout, but he adjusted his path to let the dog pass safely. Karen's mouth opened slightly in surprise. She realized that the guard was not only disciplined but also patient and thoughtful. The crowd around them sighed in relief, impressed by the calm control of his actions. Karen felt a sense of connection to the guard now. She remembered the note he had given her earlier. Kindness and respect make life brighter. Always choose patience. She held the words in her mind and felt them make sense more than ever. The guard was walking not just to follow orders but to demonstrate care and awareness in every step. Karen realized that patience, discipline, and kindness could work together in a way that created safety, respect, and trust for everyone around. As the guard reached the main palace gates, he turned slightly and gave Karen a small, respectful nod. Karen felt her heart skip a beat. She had expected a strict look, or for him to ignore her completely, but instead he had acknowledged her presence in a simple, kind way. Karen smiled and gave a quiet nod back. She felt honored that someone so disciplined had taken notice of her without saying much. She realized that his actions, more than his words, had left a deep impression on her. Karen walked carefully past the crowd and closer to the palace. She wanted to see everything clearly and learn from the guard's example. She watched as he adjusted his steps to avoid disturbing people and animals, how he stayed alert without seeming tense, and how his calm presence influenced the crowd. Everyone around seemed to follow his rhythm in some way, moving more politely and carefully. Karen understood that this was the true power of discipline combined with kindness. As she stood there watching him march, Karen felt a sense of inspiration she had never felt before. The day had started as a simple walk, but now it had become a lesson in awareness, patience, and respect. She realized that she could take this lesson into her own life, noticing others, being careful, and showing kindness in small ways. Karen knew that this experience would stay with her forever, and that she had learned something valuable from a simple encounter with a royal guard. Karen walked carefully, keeping her eyes on the royal guard as he continued marching toward the palace gates. She felt a mix of excitement and curiosity. Every step he took was precise and steady, and yet he moved with a calmness that made the entire street feel safe. Karen noticed how the crowd adjusted naturally around him. People gave space, smiled quietly, and seemed more aware of their actions. She realized that the guard's presence was not only commanding but also inspiring. As they moved closer to the palace, Karen saw a group of schoolchildren standing near the barriers. They were excited and chatting loudly, holding small flags in their hands. Karen feared that the noise might distract the guard, but he marched on without losing rhythm. Every few steps he glanced at the children to make sure they stayed safe. One boy leaned too far over the barrier, and the guard took one careful step toward him, gently signaling him to step back. The boy smiled shyly and moved safely. Karen felt impressed. She had never seen someone manage such a situation with patience and calmness. The guard's attention to detail fascinated her. He noticed every small movement in the crowd, every person who might need space, and every potential obstacle. Karen thought about how easy it would have been for him to march without noticing anyone. But he did notice, and he acted with care. She felt inspired by his awareness and realized that small gestures could have a big impact on others. Every action the guard took seemed meaningful, and Karen found herself thinking deeply about respect, kindness, and responsibility. Suddenly, a young girl dropped her scarf near the edge of the street. Karen gasped, knowing that the scarf could get caught under the guard's boots. To her amazement, the guard paused just in time. He bent slightly and used his foot to gently move the scarf away, keeping his rhythm intact. Karen's eyes widened. The crowd noticed too, and quiet murmurs of appreciation spread. The guard straightened up, continuing his march as if nothing had happened. Karen felt a surge of admiration. She realized that true discipline was not only about following orders, but also about paying attention to the smallest details. Karen continued following him, holding the note he had given her earlier close to her chest. The words seemed more meaningful now. Kindness and respect make life brighter. Always choose patience. She thought about how he had practiced these words through his actions. The guard was not just performing a duty. He was showing the city, the crowd, and even Karen how discipline could be combined with humanity. Karen felt grateful to witness this, knowing that the lesson would stay with her forever. As they reached the main palace entrance, Karen noticed another surprising detail. The guard briefly turned his head toward her and gave a small, respectful nod. Karen felt her heart beat faster. She had expected strictness or silence, but instead, she felt acknowledged and respected. She returned the nod, smiling quietly. In that moment, she realized that small gestures could communicate kindness more powerfully than words. Karen felt a warm feeling in her chest, as if the guard's actions had touched something deep inside her. The crowd around the palace was still lively, with people clapping, taking pictures, and cheering quietly. Karen noticed how everyone seemed calmer and more attentive because of the guard's presence. Children laughed and waved, tourists adjusted their positions politely, and even the vendors moved carefully to avoid disturbing anyone. Karen realized that one person's calm and disciplined actions could influence an entire group. She felt inspired to be more mindful in her own life, to notice small details and to act with kindness and patience toward others. Karen walked a little closer, observing everything carefully. She saw how the guard moved without causing any chaos, how he balanced strict discipline with quiet awareness, and how he made the crowd feel safe. She felt a deep sense of admiration and respect. This simple walk to the palace had become a remarkable lesson. Karen knew that she would remember the guard's actions, his patience and his kindness for a long time. She felt lucky to have witnessed such a rare combination of strength and humanity. Karen stayed near the gates for a few moments, letting the lesson sink in. She realized that she had learned more than she expected from a simple encounter. The guard had taught her that discipline, awareness, and kindness could exist together, making life better for everyone around. Karen smiled to herself, holding the note tightly. She knew that the experience had changed her and that she would carry this lesson with her wherever she went. Karen stood near the palace gates, holding the small note in her hand. She could still hear the sound of drums and trumpets fading as the royal guard continued his march inside the palace grounds. Karen's heart was full of excitement and admiration. She had never expected that a simple walk to the palace would turn into such a meaningful experience. The events of the day played in her mind over and over, and each memory made her smile. She thought about how she had accidentally blocked the guard earlier. At first, she had felt nervous and embarrassed, but the guard's calm and kind response had surprised her. He had shown patience, discipline, and awareness in every moment. Karen realized that she had learned a valuable lesson without even expecting it. The guard had taught her that small acts of respect and kindness could make life brighter for everyone around. Karen looked around at the crowd. People were slowly leaving, chatting about the beautiful ceremony and the impressive guard. Children waved their flags and laughed, and families took pictures to remember the day. Vendors packed up their stalls, and the city streets slowly returned to normal. Karen felt a quiet joy inside her. She had witnessed something rare and extraordinary, and it had changed the way she saw the world. She remembered the small note he had given her. Kindness and respect make life brighter. Always choose patience. Karen smiled as she held it close. The words seemed even more important now that she had seen them in action. She thought about how the guard had managed to remain disciplined while showing care for the crowd. He had handled unexpected moments like the small dog and the children near the barriers, with calm awareness and thoughtfulness. Karen realized that patience and respect were not just ideas. They were actions that could make a real difference in everyday life. Karen started walking slowly away from the palace, taking one last look at the gates. She felt inspired. She wanted to carry the lessons she had learned into her own life. She wanted to notice the small details, help others when needed, and act with patience and kindness in all situations. Karen felt that she had grown a little wiser that day. The encounter with the royal guard had shown her the power of discipline combined with humanity. As she walked, Karen thought about how she would tell her friends about the experience. She knew they would be amazed by what had happened. She could describe the guard's perfect march, his awareness of the crowd, and the small gestures of kindness that had made him extraordinary. Karen felt proud to have been part of that moment, even in a small way. She realized that sometimes life gave lessons in the most unexpected forms. The sun was beginning to set, casting a warm golden light over the city. Karen felt peaceful and happy. She held the note tightly in her hand, feeling the words inspire her. She had learned that discipline could coexist with care, that patience could create safety and respect, and that small acts of awareness could touch people's lives deeply. Karen knew that she would remember this day for the rest of her life. Karen took a deep breath and smiled. She had started the day as someone curious and a little careless, walking without thinking. Now she was leaving with understanding, admiration, and a quiet sense of growth. The royal guard had shown her that strength and kindness could exist together, and that one person's actions could influence an entire group. Karen felt grateful and inspired. As she turned to leave, she looked back one last time at the palace gates. The guard was no longer visible, but his presence lingered in her mind. Karen knew that she had witnessed more than a march. She had experienced a lesson in life itself. She walked away holding the note, carrying the feeling of respect, patience, and kindness with her. Karen smiled to herself, knowing that the lesson of the royal guard would stay with her forever and continue to guide her in everything she did.